So
Right.
Zelensky had a victory plan.
A World War III plan. Basically, let's launch World War III right now.
For victory. Right.
Yeah, well,
So
I guess from his point of view, that's like his only shot. It's sort of, again, it's like Netanyahu in Iran. Okay, we can't beat Iran by ourselves, but if we bring in the U.S. and we have a major, regional war, then maybe we'll come up on top. So it's just like, let's, release the hounds of war and hope for the best. I mean, I think it's really very similar. But it's just that
So
he doesn't have the control. Unfortunately, the Ukraine lobby, which does exist and has some power, just does not have nearly the power that the Israel lobby has. So he just, he was just left out to dry. I mean, it was rather all very kind of pathetic in the end. His effort to get people on board his victory plan.
So he had, I guess it didn't go anywhere, and so now he gave another victory plan addressing his own Ukrainian parliament.
Right. It was the same victory plan, but he just he divulged more details in that speech to the Rada. It's the same victory plan.
So do you think this is going to go anywhere? It's falling completely on deaf ears? Is it? Is there what's going on within the Rada itself? Is there rumblings of potentially regime change? I mean, if he's basically his plan is World War III, how is NATO and the EU taking this?
Well, they clearly are not happy with Zelensky and his victory plan. I mean, there's some obvious signs of displeasure. Recently, I mean, he was supposed to be, Zelensky was supposed to be invited to a conference in Ramstein, right, in Germany. And they said, oh, no, we're not going to have this. And Biden can't attend, and Harris can't attend, and nobody else from the U.S. can attend because we're all busy. And then Biden himself went there shortly thereafter and received an award, but Zelensky was not invited. There's a clear, obviously, they are trying to push him aside. They wanted him to at least shut up for a while, at least through the election, I'm thinking. But I think in general, they're starting to realize that the guy is a clown. I mean, literally a clown. I mean, he's just a comedian. And, again, people who pointed this out earlier, and probably a cocaine addict, they're always, those are Russian talking points. You can't talk. It just reminds me of kind of the media treatment of Biden and now of Harris, actually. They protect them. They suppress information that casts them in a negative light, and then, the information that does cast them in a negative light that gets out there, they always say, oh, it's just, it's Russian talking points or it's some sort of right-wing conspiracy or whatever. And they did that with Zelensky for a long time. They built him up as the current incarnation of Churchill, and anybody who really was following him closely and knew anything about the guy knew this was absurd. Just as Biden was not sharp as a tack, he was a dementia patient. This guy was always a clown and had no grasp of military realities. Everything was about PR for him. And that worked okay. It worked it didn't really work on the battlefields, but it worked as far as Kiev's relationship with the West was concerned. But it seemed, finally, it's just like reality eventually seeps through. And they're just kind of looking at him and say, who is this guy? And that puts Zelensky in some real danger, because I think probably like his most, let's say the ace up the sleeve that they always had was his relationship with the West. It's like you go there and you always get a lot of money and a lot of applause, and it's, he's the PR guy, and he was successful at that. But he clearly has not been successful recently. And I think you could see it also just in this Rada speech. There was clapping, but I've seen videos of it, and you can see people slow clapping, it's like this behind them and with grim faces. It's just clear that there was no enthusiasm for the plan. So I think he's probably in some real trouble. I mean, because, maybe the West will rally around him again, and they'll try to pretend that he's Churchill again, but it's not looking very good for him right now.
So do you think that the West would try to replace him, or that it would be internally within Ukraine? Or do you think
I think it would probably be, obviously, the West would be involved in it. There, the intelligence agencies there that work closely with Ukrainian intelligence agencies. So they would be involved, but I think it probably would be domestic more than anything. There are the factions the ultra-nationalist factions in Ukraine. Well, essentially, I think, Zelensky used to not be an ultra-nationalist. Remember, he was actually elected on a peace platform. Let's have peace with Russia. Let's have the Minsk Accords, actually. But after he came in power, he kind of learned, well, that's not the way things work in this town here. But over time, I think he's basically become a nationalist himself. It's like, to stay in government, you have to be not just a nationalist, an ultra-nationalist, a Banderite. That's the ideology at the top. And it's going to be some other Banderite faction, I think, that will probably push him out.
So we will get more of the same. A regime change, you're thinking, will just be another Banderite, another ultra-nationalist, somebody that wants to keep the war going.
Unfortunately, I don't. They're just firmly in charge. There are obviously a lot of very unhappy Ukrainians, but they don't have any power.
But why would the West want to do this? Because it seems like it's clear that we can't keep this war going. I mean, we are not able to supply Ukraine with what it needs. What's the plan? Is there a plan?
Well, I think that's the problem, is they never had a plan B. Plan A was to weaken Russia, at least weaken Russia, and at best, bring about regime change in Russia and disintegration of Russia. That was I don't think some of the crazier ones among them really thought they could pull that off. I guess quite a few, quite a few of them are rather crazy. So, but it was mainly to weaken Russia, and this clearly has not worked. They thought that they would be able to push the Russians back and then force them to take, if not actually cause the downfall of Putin, they could at least, force him to sign a rather humiliating, treaty and, accept that the failure of his SMO. But it's clear that's not going to happen. And I think the problem is they don't have a plan B. And these people are just they're not deep thinkers. They never stop to think, well, what if this doesn't work? It's just like, it's got to work. So they're just repeating the same old things, and they're still giving them money, but they give them money, that isn't weapons, but they just don't have as many weapons to give. And they, at some point, maybe if Trump gets in there will be a real effort to trying to work out a deal with the Russians. I'm not all that optimistic about that. So I think it's just it's very foolish, but it's just going to go on. They're going to continue to give Ukraine weapons, but fewer and fewer weapons over time. And Ukraine is going to continue to lose. And they're going to also the regime is going to continue to hatch these really wild schemes to somehow get the U.S. involved, the West involved, because I think they understand they cannot. They're bound to lose this war on their own. So we had recently, for example, there was those leaks and from Kiev and statements by Zelensky to the effect that Ukraine might have to acquire its own nuclear weapons. And I think that was just blackmail. It's just part of an effort to really blackmail the West into supporting them and becoming more than supporting them, becoming directly involved in the fight to a much greater extent than they have been so far.
Could Ukraine even do that?
I don't think so. Well, I think in peacetime they could. Okay, they could develop a nuclear weapon. I mean, they have nuclear power plants, and at least before the downfall, of the Soviet Union, there were a lot of good scientists, and I don't know how many there still are, but let's assume that they could. But that would be in peacetime. The thing is, this is not peacetime, and the Russians have demonstrated the ability to, target industrial and manufacturing and scientific facilities just throughout the territory of Ukraine. So, I mean, the Russians are going to know where the laboratories are, and where and they're going to find them, and they have the highly precise hypersonic missiles to destroy the facilities. It's just not going to happen. I don't see that it would be at all possible, even in peacetime. I think he made some ridiculous statement about doing it in 2 weeks. That's just absurd. I mean, even if they have the fissile materials, it takes several months and probably a couple years to do it. And it's just not going to happen, and under the present circumstances.
It's crazy. So you're saying that, okay, we'll try to keep this war going because we don't have a plan B, and we'll continue to give them money and weapons. The money, I don't even know how much it means anymore because we don't have the munitions.
Well, it's to support, to pay salaries within Ukraine to keep the civil government going, and
that's so crazy that we're doing that we're paying the salaries of this Kiev government, this Kiev regime that is fighting this proxy war for us, and we're so much in debt here. We're not able to help American citizens that are suffering from natural disasters here, or deal with the homeless problems. I just don't see how we can continue doing this. I mean, throughout Europe, we're seeing how unpopular it's becoming. There is going to be, through the democratic processes, regime changes in the West, right? So this can't continue forever. And then also, we're just coming up to hard limits. Like,